And as we look forward to this day being very enlightening indeed, I'm sure all of you will agree that we must now begin with our first panel discussion of the day. So I'd like to invite on stage our panelists and of course our panel chair. Before that, I'd like to introduce our first panel discussion, which is the Aviation Industry Takeoff, the next 5 years navigation plan. Right after the panel discussion, we'd like to open the house for questions because we want it to be a two-way communication and making it more engaging. Let us put our hands together as I invite on stage our panelists. Mr. G. Ashok Kumar, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Civil Aviation, Government of India. Let us put our hands together as he joins us on stage. I'd also like to welcome Mr. S. Machendranathan, Chairman, the Airport Economic Regulatory Authority. Thank you for joining us, sir. Let's welcome on stage Mr. Kramer Bol, CEO, Jet Airways. A warm welcome to Mr. Vivek Gaur, MD and CEO, Airworks India Engineering. And our panel chair, let us put our hands together as I request Mr. Amber Dubey, Head of Defence and Aerospace, KPMG, joining us on stage. Thank you for bearing with us for a couple of minutes while we changed our stage setup. Right after the panel discussion, we'd like to have an open house. And I'd now like to hand over to Mr. Dubey to take forward the discussion.
Hello. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's not going so well at Sydney. I think we're already some 170 for one, and we just hope our bowlers now get some early strikes. Fantastic presentation by the minister earlier. Doesn't really look like a medical doctor, the way he's picked up in 4 months, and the way he was speaking about the numbers and data, and a very quick grasp of issues without any written script. I think it's a very, very positive development. The other good factor was the fact that he actually straddles across the two major drivers of aviation, which is aviation per se for business travelers and tourism. And these are the two reasons primarily why people fly. We're also proud to have a very, very distinguished panel of speakers here on stage. As you know, none of them need any introduction. On our extreme right, we have Mr. Vivek Gaur, almost like a doyen of the MRO industry. Next to him is Mr. Ashok Kumar. He's been there in the ministry for quite some time now, very in-depth knowledge of issues. He's one of the most proactive and approachable persons, and I'm not saying that just to get into his good books or just to be nice to him. He's actually someone whom we can just literally send an SMS and set up a meeting, go exchange views, disagree with him, and get his side of the, his perspective on why things are happening the way they are happening, because sometimes we think of things in our particular way and not the way from the democratic angle or the political angle, etc. Next to him is also Mr. Machendranathan, again a veteran of the aviation industry. He was earlier financial advisor in Ministry of Civil Aviation itself. He's also been on the board of several companies, including Air India. So he's seen things at very close quarters. And now he's come back as the chairman of the Airports Economic Regulatory Authority, AERA, which again is a very, very critical sector. Airports and the tariffs play a very, very important role there as we go forth towards setting up the new airports in Navi Mumbai and Goa and Agra and many other Kannur, many other places, even the no-frills airports. And there's this concept of Airports Authority airports now being given out for private operations. And then on top of that, there are also brownfield development happening in the existing airports as traffic increases, the runway capacity, the air navigation. All that ultimately has to be paid for by the tariffs, and the tariffs have to be a right balance of the interests of the airport developers, so that the ones who put in the capital get a fair return on their investments, and the passenger, so that the passenger doesn't feel shortchanged, because in that airport you'll see also people who are from the upper end of the economic strata, as well as the plumbers or the carpenters who are flying down to Dubai, for whom every rupee pinches. It's fantastic to have someone of the stature of Mr. Machendranath with deep knowledge of aviation coming back as the chairperson in the airport sector. Next to him is Kramer Paul, who runs one of our most successful airlines, Jet Airways. They have a great relationship now with Etihad, and through that I'm sure they're going to see more and more expansion, and it'll be great to hear their perspective as well. The way we'll do it is we are starting about 15 minutes late, but we'll do an on-time departure at 12:15. That's the given time slot, so we'll just reduce it to about an hour. We'll also try and intersperse, as the lady said earlier, we'll try and keep it more and more interactive, so that it doesn't become a one-way speech. Thankfully, there are no speeches and there are no presentations and no PowerPoint, because as I say, people who use PowerPoint are people who neither have the power nor the point. So we have done away with the PowerPoints. It's going to be just discussions. These are people with deep experience and with very, very senior positions. So we'll keep it informal, keep it communicative, interactive. I'll also request the luminaries on the dais to also ask questions, because this is not a one-way street where I'll ask questions. I'll basically just be a facilitator and rather let the experts come up with the, and we'll request you, because there are experts sitting in the audience as well. All of you have maybe 2-3 decades of deep experience. Please ask these questions, and it'll make it that much more fun. So over the next 1 hour, please just tighten up your seatbelt, relax, sit back, and enjoy the show. First up, on we go to the man in the hot seat, Mr. Ashok Kumar. He's come up with this great plan about marrying 5/20 and the route dispersal guidelines. He's sitting there amidst the top decision makers. It'll be great to hear his perspective, some opening remarks on the way he sees aviation policy now shaping up and how it can help us reach that target of number 3 by 2020 and number 1 by 2030, which is the combined vision of everybody sitting in this room. Can I start with Mr. Ashok Kumar?
Thanks, Amber. It's nice to hear some good words, and it was also nice that our minister, who has picked up so many things and had led a way ahead for discussions in this place. And first of all, let me thank Economic Times for hosting this aviation summit, for one reason, that it is not a travel portal which is hosting this event. And that's very important, because for me, it's a very significant change, because jet engine has always been considered as an engine for elitist mode of transport. But jet engine can really propel economic growth of a country or a region. So a person or a group who is really looking at economic growth of a country, Economic Times, handling or organizing aviation summit is a paradigm shift of the way we think at aviation sector. That's very important. So the most important, I think, message we should now take it up is that aviation sector should be treated as a growth engine rather than just a engine for traveling. That's very important, because civil aviation, as my minister said, when everybody talks about civil aviation, first thing comes to everybody's mind is planes, aeroplanes. And India, it is Air India. It is high time we get out of that mindset. The first thing is that civil aviation is not only Air India, not only Sherry Lines that are here, but it has general aviation, it has helicopters, it has a lot of other things associated with flying. It has now drones also come into the picture. Now we have seen pictures of drones delivering pizza into the houses. We have now seen a lot of civil applications of drones. Unfortunately, we don't have a regulation for that. That will come to that later. So, and second is, it also means airports. And when we say airports, we probably, our 10 years back, probably in our mind, we had very aloof airport, far away from the city and very difficult to access. But now airports have changed. Airports have become a huge center of economic activity. A lot of activity, economic activity grow around the airports. We have seen the dial, we have so much of hotels that come around it. So aviation, in aviation sector, the present aviation sector, airport doesn't mean a place where planes land and planes depart. It is also a center of activity where around it conferences can be held, hotels can be there, a lot of shopping. And I'm told that the sales in the duty-free shop in airport dial is very high. So there is a lot of known aero activity and non-aero income which is associated with airports. That is the second part with that. And again, civil aviation and aviation sector involves jobs. And again, what comes to our mind? A pilot and an air hostess. Not yours, general perception of aviation is limited to that job of a pilot or an air hostess. But there are lots of jobs associated with aviation sector, probably from the loader who loads luggage onto a plane to probably a very big software expert who handles the complex flying of aircrafts, the aviation, the
navigation.
Aviation is a huge sector of law. From a private guard who checks it to a person who takes on command of a hijacked plane. The range of opportunities available is very high. Again, MROs. MRO is one sector which we had been missing it out, but I'll come to that later. So what I'm trying to say is that the aviation now should not be limited to just a transport sector. It has a growth engine. That's the first point which we the ministry would like to go, and the message which we want to the world, or the India people to understand is that it is not an elitist mode of transport. That is one perception which had always been a hindrance to a growth of aviation sector in the country. Because anything in the aviation sector, there are no MPs fighting for us. If you know the cost of ATF in the country, it's probably the figures I can tell you: 37,000 rupees in Kuwait. It is 67,000 rupees in India, and we don't have any MPs fighting for that. Why? Because it is not a farmer's issue. Probably it is not. It is considered as an elitist mode of transport. But then that perception has to be changed, because we have almost 16 crore people flying in the country now. We have low cost carriers where we have people, as Amber was telling, maybe carpenters, nurses, drivers, all flying to Gulf using the sector. And as the minister said, 99% of the foreign tourists who come into India, they not only are high-end tourists, but some of them are low-end tourists. They are also coming in through airport and aircraft. So the perception that it is an elite mode of transport and it's only related to elite and that can be taxed ad infinitum has to go. These are the first major thing I would like to say as a vision. But again, keeping this in view, that aviation is a growth engine, we have come out with a draft civil aviation policy, addresses many of the issues. I'll take probably 5 minutes to say what we are trying to do in the ministry. This draft civil aviation policy has been kept on the website. if you notice, the policy has been there from 97 and onwards. Many times it was revised and never published, but hopefully this time it will get published. We had keeping the factors as I have mentioned before, all a comprehensive package of development is what envisaged. Because earlier aviation sector, as I said, was like a blind man and the elephant, different person touching different part of the elephant, and they thought that as a sector. Now we are trying to put a comprehensive package for that. And first, we are very confident and optimistic that there will be a tremendous growth in this sector. If you look at this month, January, February growth, it's about 21.48% than last year. It's a very significant growth. And always Indian aviation and Indian economy was always going hand in hand, because both, I don't know which leads the other, but they always been together. They always step together. So this is good thing that augurs well for our economy and also for the aviation sector, that there's a positive trend. 21.4% is a very good growth factor, with most of the airlines reporting about more than 77% PLF. That's a very interesting sector. And with the fast growing middle class, disposable income and pension for tourism and increasing rate of urbanization, I am sure that the sector is bound to grow. The number of passengers flying would grow up. Coming to the airports, there are about 450 airstrips in the country, but operational airports are just 76. A country of this size should have more operational airports, should have more aeroplanes flying. We have about 400 aircrafts of the scheduled airlines, but then we should have more and more of them flying. That's what we are targeting. We are hoping that by 2020 at least 10,000 aircrafts will be flying in the country. And for them to land, we should have airports. We know some of our airports have got international awards in the last maybe 5-6 years, and last year also DIAL had got one of the best airports in the world award. So we keeping in that tradition. We want world-class facilities at the airports, but that should not add to the cost of the passengers. ERA chairman Saab is here. I am sure that he will also look into it. Our ministry's viewpoint is that the cost of air travel should be made minimal, and at the same time we don't want to compromise on the quality of the airports. Airports which we have now got used to, the Bombay airport and the DIAL airport, should have good standard airports. And we want to make these airports as international hubs, at least 6 of them. But most important is that we wanted to make it as a multimodal hub. As of now, none of the airports have connected with rail. So we want to have rail connectivity, metro connectivity, maybe a highway connectivity at the airport, so that the passengers can seamlessly travel from one sector to another sector without really using cab or auto rickshaw in between. So we are planning to have airports which would have multi-modal transport facility. That's one of the vision. So as I said, I am trying to talk about not about the problems in the country. You know, we have a lot of problems of the aviation sector. I would like to look at and positively and address what are there for a future. That's a topic which is given to me also. So all airports, we would like to have, at least the major ones, to have connectivity, multimodal connectivity, and 6 airports to have to be developed further as integrated international hubs. Second point with this airport is that we want to have eco-friendly design, environmental-friendly design, tapping solar power, recycling of water, and environmental issues like noise reduction, all addressed as a part of that. Second is we also want to have airports joining hands with those local authorities, municipalities and all, to develop the airport. See, if you remember in many of the foreign countries like America and all, you have municipalities sponsoring and developing marketing airports. Unfortunately in India, we don't have any airport marketing itself. So as I said, if we are looking at airport as a center of economic activity built around it, We would like to have airports also marketing them as an economic hub. We would like to have all facilities associated with that to be a part of the airport. So this is the type of vision of the airport which we are planning. We want to have or push the hub and spoke arrangement where regional airlines can bring all the passengers to a hub, one of the 6 or 7 hubs which we are planning to have, and then disperse passengers all over the country. If there's such a big country, we would like to have this hub and spoke arrangement developed in a big way. As Minister was mentioning, we have developed very successful PPP model airports in Bombay, Delhi, Hyderabad, Bangalore and Cochin. And we are in the process of developing further in Chennai, Calcutta, Ahmedabad and Jaipur. All these, in these airports, we are trying to have a very, very important facility of better seamless movement of passengers. Before going to that, I have to say that in Navi Mumbai, yesterday PM also in his in his discussion, Pragati, this point was discussed how to develop the second airport in Mumbai, Navi Mumbai. About 15,500 crores is what is being investment being put up in that area. We have Goa airport in Goa coming up, Kannur, Andhra. 15 airports we have permitted to take up development in a short time. Now, second important point in the airport sector is about the passenger facilitation. Now we find people more and more techno-savvy people are coming there. People want to have very quick pass through the airport and to the plane. We would like to have more and more automation and electronic passenger facilities in these airports. We want to have our passengers having the best flying experience at international standards, apart from being safe and secure. You know, in the last 1 year, we have many cases of planes suddenly disappearing in the sky. We don't want that to happen. Our safety record is reasonably very good. In the last couple of years, we never had any major accident here. Our security is rated as one of the best in the world. So, assuring safe and secure passenger travel, we also want the passengers to have a good travel experience. In this sector, we are trying to have electronic boarding passes. As of now, we have a paper printed thing. We are looking at electronic boarding passes. We want to use automatic drop-in of baggages where passengers can drop it, and then the self-generation of passenger tags, integrating that with the tickets or the boarding pass sometime, and then very convenient movement of passengers from check-in to the aircraft. That is what we have given directions on that. We also try to use extensive use of technology for security purposes. The pat down, the physical pat down, and also a problem in the airport, but we are trying to address that with the use of technology. Use of technology is one thing which is now being promoted in the ministry and in the aviation sector in a big way. This is to increase transparency, this is to increase the speed, this is to increase the efficiency. We have with the DGCA and all many licenses, because aviation is a very highly regulated segment which requires many licenses and approvals. And as of now, the approvals take a lot of time. Many of them are paper filed. It has to be, multiple copies have to be given, and then queries come and go. What we have planned is that now we will move on to an electronic mode. People who are gone through that process will understand it takes almost 2 years for you to get an aircraft in. So much of sanctions, permissions required. We want to do away with that, cut that bureaucracy, and through electronic mode of filing, through an electronic mode of reply, sanctions would come through. And we would like to make the e-governance at a very, very high proportion of our administration. So this is one thing which we are moving. We have started e-office in the ministry where all the file movements are now in electronic mode. We have asked the DGCA and the BCAS, which looks at the security part of it, to have e-movement of things, and e-filing of applications, e-approval also is being taken up. So that will cut down a lot of delay. We also plan to have biometric access at the airport, so that now that issue also of having problem with looking at the passers and the CISF person checking up in half a minute or half an hour to locate your name and then look at your card and go. We probably like to look at through a card reader where you are, if you are a person designated to fly in that time, may be permitted in freely. So that's the type of electronic and use of technology which we are taking it up. And also the Internet of Things. We are working very much on using the Internet of Things concept for transfer of data between various sectors. Metadata, for example, can automatically, without intervention, move on to a pilot's plane or pilot's phone or something, and he may be able to inform us the delay of an aircraft. Passenger, if they have passenger data, passengers data or phone number with them, we can inform them automatically without a manual intervention, the cause of delay or even the change of boarding gate. So Internet of Things again can be used for proper maintenance of aircraft, where the aircraft parts are to be serviced. It doesn't require human intervention to tell that this has to be repaired now. So putting sensors in various parts of the aircraft and various machines which we are now using, we want to have a seamless talking or connection of all these equipments so that the travel experience of the passenger is very high and without any human interventions spread the data around. That's the very high use of technology is one thing which we are planning.
Ashok sir, if you don't mind, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we'll just take some opening remarks and then maybe come back.
So just because I thought
you need a full hour. You need a full hour because
air connectivity, because we are talking about air connectivity. Mr. Dubey had told about the RDG and 5/20. There's a restrictive rule of 5/20 which we are taking up into a slightly maybe complex but then much more shorter time frame period of domestic flying credits that we can at the session in the afternoon probably you can discuss on that. We are now trying to encourage smaller aircrafts in a very big way. Our thrust in the ministry is that less than 40-seater or less than 20-seater aircraft should come up in the country, because as of now the main connectivity is between the metros. So we want more penetration of aircrafts into the cities. So smaller aircraft is one thing which we are taking it up. Then we don't want other hubs to be developed at the cost of Indian hubs. So that's why we are tweaking a little bit of the 520 rules to develop sectors outside those 6-hour radius. I'll come to that later. Cargo sector. The present movement of cargo sector is actually about 2.3 million tons, very, very small compared to the traffic of the size of the country. Hong Kong has much more time than what we have time for. So cargo is one sector which we want to promote further. The belly cargo is one thing which is actually going, many of the aircrafts are flying passengers, but not much of cargo is being taken from here. So cargo is one sector which we are very vigorously trying to push through the next 5 years. We target about 8% growth in this sector. Exclusively the policy is being brought out on the cargo sector. And most important is about the Make in India, with the Prime Minister of India has come out with MRO segment, which my friend will talk about it. This is one big shocker because $750 million US industry is now going waste in the country, because it is all our planes are flying abroad for their repairs. We have taken it up very seriously with the finance ministry. Probably in a month's time something would happen on that, and we want that MRO industry should be firmly placed in India. Not only Indian aircraft should be serviced here. We want the airlines, aircrafts around the country should be coming for here, MRO here. And we also plan to have air navigation system reforms. Gagan is already there, and we want to probably bring in more institutional changes where the ANS, which is a part of the airport authority, would be made separately as an authority, and airport authority would be made competitive probably by listing it in stock exchange and going public. The last important is about the development of general aviation and helicopter operation. As I said before, we want smaller aircrafts, general aviation to develop, because that is the one which is feeding the aviation sector. And the last is about the role of state governments. We want the state governments to be a part of it. always it had been a fact that civil aviation was considered as a central government subject. This is in last 2 years we had meeting of the state civil aviation ministers here. And when I remember when sir was there, when we conducted a meeting, the first meeting we sent a letter to the state government asking for the minister of civil aviation to represent. Many of them were looking for a civil aviation minister, because many of the states do not have a person who is handling civil aviation at all. But we then, after that, they have notified a person as a person who is handling civil aviation, and 2 meetings have taken place, and we are trying to develop the airports and the sector with collaboration with the state government. We are trying to reduce the cost of operations of airport by asking the state government to join hands in underwriting the seats, probably in helping us in reducing the cost of security by providing local police, in providing fire tender services at the lower cost, reducing taxes for municipality, which can in turn reduce the cost of operations at the airport, which can in turn cause the cost of operations of the airline, which in turn can cause a more increase in flying. So holding hands with civil aviation, with the state government is another major thrust we are moving forward in the next 5 years. Thanks a lot. There are a lot of points I think I covered.
Big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Ashok Kumar. That was like a supersonic speed of description of what things are happening in the aviation sector. Clearly, he needed a full 1-hour session to himself, and thank you so much for, I think that was a great way to begin. Let's switch gear now and move towards industry, and let me come to Kramer. Now, he's someone who flies long haul, short haul, medium haul, and also to the far corners of India. I think the 3 things which what Mr. Ashok Kumar also focused on is, as an industry, if you have to do well, you have to increase revenue, reduce cost, and maintain safety. These are 3 broad buckets of areas to focus on. Can we have some of your thoughts about maybe the top 2 or 3 suggestions would you have in terms of key action steps, what the industry should take, and some 2 action steps for the ministry to make this airline sector more and more vibrant? Kramer?
Thanks, Amber. I think I'm the only Australian in the room today, so hope are there any other Australians in the room? I'm not too sure of the score, but may the best team win, and I look forward to seeing the outcome.
It is leading.
I think there's a higher proportion of Australians in this room than there are Australians at the SCG, because there's not many Australians at the SCG. It's a sea of blue. Thanks, Amber. It was very interesting to hear your tourism minister speak this morning, because where I've worked in the past, tourism is a key plank of the development of any country. And being a guest in your country and having lived here for 10 months and just seeing a small piece of India, you know, my perception has changed, and I think that this country has such a bright future for tourism. And I get excited when I see the country, when I understand what India has to offer. So for me, that's an exciting component of our top line, which is the revenue. Unfortunately, though, the fixation in India is on domestic aviation, and I understand it. And it's, you know, we are dedicated to domestic aviation, and we are dedicated to grow and maintain our position. We fly to 51 points in India, more than any other airline. So our commitment over 20 years has been proven. Our commitment to domestic aviation is there. But I see it slightly differently. I see that we have an opportunity to connect internationally, domestically, and we are, as we define ourselves, a network carrier. And network carrier means we work internationally into various points in India, the main metros, but other points, and connecting the tourist, the business traveller, the worker, both in and out of India. And for me, that's the future. And 2 things are very prominent, and I like where the policy is going: tourism and Make in India, because we want to do as much in India as we possibly can. We've just signed a contract last week. I just signed a contract with MRO here in India to do more work in India, and we want to be paying in rupees, not US dollars, because quite frankly, the exchange rate kills organisations like us. We're paying in US dollars or any other currency. It's a problem for us with the rupee around about 63, 64. So our strategy is around the top line. It's driving tourism, driving business travel, driving the network integration, domestic and international. Now, unfortunately, we can't do that on our own. So a key platform of what we're doing is around partnerships. And Etihad was mentioned today. It's just not Etihad. It is, we have 22 other airline partners. We have a 24% shareholder in Etihad. Abu Dhabi is one of our gateways, but we still have our major European gateway of Brussels and London. And the more we can do to spread our wings, both organically and with partners, the better it is for the tourist, for the business traveller, because the more choice, the more destinations that you reach. Come to India, one stop. Come to India direct. Creates flexibility for the traveller, regardless. And I think the catalytic effect, and you drew on the perception of what aviation adds to purely jobs, whether it be pilots, cabin crew, engineers. When you look at the catalytic effect of a network carrier like us, we are carrying the worker to points out of India. So the foreign income and the impact that has on India is impressive. And you look at a country like the Philippines, the greatest export is their people. And being in India for such a short period of time, what I realised, you know, the power that India has with the intellect. You know, where else can you find the engineers, the IT professionals, and so on? You can't find it anywhere else to the scale and to the quality that you can in India. So I think we have a great, call it Make in India, we have a great export when it comes to our people. The other component, and this is a long way around to your question, Anna, so I apologise.
2 points, finally.
2 points, is the cost. And we a lot of burden is put on the airlines here in India, and it is seen as a luxury industry, and it's not right. We pay, you know, approximately 60% more for fuel in India than we do at other points. We pay approximately 50%, 40 to 50% more for airport charges at the key metros than we do at our key competing points such as Bangkok or Dubai. Now, when you look at aviation fuel being 40% of your overall cost, you look at airport charges being 5%, that's a huge cost. So what I'm hopeful for is simplification of the regime, of the cost regime here in India, which will make it, and the processes and the procedures, which makes it conducive to growth. And if you compare some of the other powerhouses of the region, Singapore or Dubai, what has happened is that the aviation market, the aviation industry has driven the growth, and as you say, is the engine for the growth. And if we can get it right, and everyone knows the scale of opportunity in India, and it is there, if we can get it right, you know, the growth and the opportunity in India will be delivered. But we must work together, and it's a collaborative approach. So, long answer to
no, fantastic. A big round of applause for Kramer. I think that was very, very encouraging. Before we go to from the regulated to the regulator, Mr. Machendra Nathan, we'll just take 2 short questions. So please stop checking the score. It's not going very well at the moment. We can have 2 quick questions. We can have the microphones.
I don't have the score. It's going well for you, it seems.
Yeah, Captain Bali.
No, just one thing. Sure. Actually, today we have permitted airline pilots also to update the score frequently. So why don't you update the score for at least sitting here?
Exactly. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have access.
Ah, good. Thank you. Good.
All right. All right.
How many overs?
I can see some some drops of perspiration on Kramer. Fantastic. So India's fighting back.
I think we should ask you to continue speaking.
Okay, Group Captain Bali, please keep the question very short because we just have another 25 minutes and I promise that we'll do an on-time departure.
Sir, I'm Group Captain Bali from Business Aircraft Operator Association. We are very encouraged with what Mr. Ashok Kumar said and our minister said about the positive approach and definite time frame in which to address all the issues. And we know, sir, you are working on the separate general aviation policy. But from the industry point of view, we can tell you the biggest impediment in our being able to optimize our potential in the GA industry for small aircraft is the unhelpful regulatory approach, sir. Whether it is MRO or whether it is a small aircraft, both are suffering, and as well as the helicopters. In fact, the world over, everyone is looking at a collaborative rule making, sir. And I think that attitude has to come in. And are you looking at the national aviation policy addressing this collaborative requirement of rule making, sir? Thank you, sir.
And let me tell you, Bali Saab is one of those people who are the most regular attendees of all conferences. Many people are cynical. They say, what do we actually achieve? But he is one person who always comes and is bearing the flag for the general aviation. You talked about it, Sharma ji talked about it, and some of the remote locations will need business aircrafts because there are barely about 18 or 20 airports which can actually land a Airbus 320 or a Boeing 737. Would you like to just quickly, he's talking about collaborative decision making, and the minister also talked about that.
Yes, actually, Mr. Captain Wiley will understand that we had now amongst ourselves a lot of discussion on this issue. Ministry has taken a stand that we should have a collaborative approach, and that's why the different policy has also been put in work on, and then a lot of discussions are taking place on that. 2 points which I'd like to mention in this part is that one, we have embarked on a process of simplifying of the procedures. I mentioned that the business process re-engineering is being done, and the decisions and the filing of permissions and all will be made through the electronic mode. That's one part of it. Second, you said that the consultation of the stakeholders is being done, and most of your suggestions which we have come for the as a response to the draft civil aviation policy has been recorded and properly addressed. Probably when the new policy comes in, you will appreciate that these have been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think the largest problem, sir, is that this huge tax differential of about 17 or 18% between an NSOP and if you bring in as a private jet. And that forces people to bring in as an NSOP, which also creates a number of FOIs, the flight operations inspectors. That brings DGC under the FAA scanner, and we get a category 2 rating. So I think you see two disconnected points, how actually get connected. So if you can somehow get this tax anomaly sorted out with our Minister of Finance, I think it will have a much bigger impact on India's rating, and we have airlines like Jet and Air India which are flying abroad, and now you're opening it up to other players. So they can't enter US unless we get to category 1 rating back.
So that's why I said that requires a lot of sustained pressure from the stakeholders, because as I said before, the whole perception of the sector is wrong. And if you are talking on behalf of reducing the taxes for a private jet, then people will turn around and say you are supporting the rich man. That is the whole, there has to be a perception change which can be brought about only by probably the stakeholders' constant bombardment with their facts and figures and telling that it's only leading to a very notional loss of income. It's not, we are not losing much. When we did a calculation, we found that it's about 30 crores. What is 30 crores notional income loss to a country when we are talking about $1 trillion economy? But then, if somebody says that reduce the tax for a corporate jet, you are not talking politically correct. That's the problem.
Fantastic. So Bali Saab is an air warrior. Don't give up. Keep fighting, and we'll get there. We got another 25 minutes to go. Now let's move to Mr. Machendranathan. You've come on just the right time. I think the airports, enough has been said about how great the airports have become now. AAI is also stepping up. Unfortunately, Mr. Srivastava had a board meeting, so he couldn't join us, the chairman AAI. There's also this whole issue about the second airports now coming up in Navi Mumbai, Goa, and this whole thing comes in that why do we need to regulate where we have 2 airports, and AERA's philosophy has been that 2 or more is competition, like in the cargo sector. And the last part is this whole thing about the till approach, where there's a communist approach which says just put everything into single till, the all money making should be reduced. There's the extreme view of making it a dual till, and the middle of the path route of hybrid till. So what would be your initial thoughts, 2 or 3 points? I know these are early days, but given your past deep experience of this issue, what do you think are 2 or 3 key focus points for you as you take charge here?
Good morning, friends. I'm indeed very happy to be here, back in the sector. I have just joined, and I would not like to, make many comments, but I think I should thank Ashok for giving an overview of what is happening.
Right.
I think many of the problems are still, lingering on from the past. But so far as the regulator is concerned, we would like to see that, the interests of all the people who are using the airports is addressed properly. Of course, the passengers are the first focus, the airlines, the operators, of course,
Cargo.
the cargo people, the ground handling, the ISPs, the people who provide the services in the airport. So we have to address a large section of people, but the regulator would like to see that the interests of everybody is kept in mind. So far as the regulation itself is concerned, I think it should be simple to follow. It should be consistent, and so that there is some amount of reliability on the regulation, so that people can invest and say that okay, this is going to be there for quite some time. There should not be too much of inconsistent approaches to regulation. And so far as the till is concerned, I think I will not say much. There has been a lot of talk about the till, but I would only like to say one thing, that so far as the investor is concerned, if he gets a return, a fairly good return, decent return on his investment, I think he should be happy with that. And ERA has been giving a return of about 16%, and most of these are in the urban areas.
We wish 16% is very good.
You want to reduce it?
No, we wish 16% is beautiful. We wish.
So that's what I'm saying. So 16% in an urban setting with very little risk should be an attractive proposition for the investor. This is what it looks like, but we'll have to go into it. And I would not like to say much, but then I would leave this thought with most of you. There's a feeling that it's too much heavy-handed regulation is there. I don't think that is the real thing, because the regulator has always taken the view that if there is competition and if it is not very material, then we don't go in for heavy-handed regulation. We say, okay, you keep your tariffs. So I think the approach has been quite sensible, but we'll still look at it. If there are any inconsistencies, we would like to reduce them. And if there are any very complicated kind of working out which is not very transparent, we would like to see that it is made simpler. But I think that among the various infrastructure sectors, airport development is one thing where there is a good opportunity for investment, and I think you can go ahead on the premise that the regulation is there and that your interests will be protected. I think that to that extent I can give an assurance on behalf of the regulator.
So one of the things many people in the industry feel is that perhaps you have too big a workload. And let me just elaborate that, because in most of the countries abroad, whether it's UK, US, or say other countries in the European Union, typically the airport tariff regulator looks at the top 4 or 5 airports which pretty much control 55 to 60% of the traffic. Here, because we have this artificial definition of 1.5 million, which actually is nothing as compared to the total traffic, you have, I think, 16 or 17 airports which will only become 20 and 25, maybe in the next few years if we do well, which we will. So do you think is there some way to reduce the number of airports? Does that make sense, or would you like not to comment on it?
No, I would like to say that, though it's 15 airports, you determine the tariff for 5 years. Control period is 5 years. It's not every year that you control it.
Right.
They come up with an annual tariff plan, this thing, and then we approve it. But I don't think the workload is very high. But we may have to look at it. What you're saying is very correct. If more and more airports come up, and if civil aviation is growing at the rate he's saying 20%, it's very good, and we may have to look at it. But right now the ERA Act mandates that anything with more than 1.5 million passenger capacity, traffic, has to be regulated. Sure. So unless there is a change in the Act itself, I don't think there is any way of
because it's not just the airport, sir, not just the passenger. In many airports where the airport operator also handles the cargo becomes an issue. Then there are other complaints, and I'm sure we'll come to Vivek and he'll also speak about the other parties which are actually not regulated, but I'm sure they also approach you, the MROs, the general aviation and cargo. and other maybe even the food and beverage and the duty-free people. And then there's the fueling people, the into-plane services, ITP services we call it. So that actually makes it a very, very broad portfolio to be put on.
I said no. If there is competition,
right,
then there is very light, regulation.
right.
So I don't think that's really very. But we would like to reduce the time frame for setting tariffs.
Sure.
And we would like to do it prospective.
Right.
Respecting the autonomy of the regulator, because sir is independent regulator, so nothing to do with the ministry. But from the ministry's point of view, I would like to place some facts on for his consideration. One is we had a policy long back of giving exemption to less than 80-seater planes landing in airports. This is us to encourage smaller aircraft flying into remote areas and improve the connectivity. But unfortunately, the major airports like Delhi, Mumbai and other ERA-regulated airports, that facility is not being given. So probably from the industry's point of view, where we are trying to look for smaller connectivity and connectivity to smaller cities, where we want smaller aircrafts coming in, probably I would like to look into that.
No, so our friends from GMR are here. Let's put them in the dock. I see our good friend Pradeep Panikkar right in the front row taking furious notes.
No, I think what he's saying is very correct. But see, right now the regulator has left it to the airports to determine the details of the tariff and then submit a plan, which is again approved. But maybe we'll have to look at it, yes, sir, to give effect to this.
I think the time permitting will come back to the fact that between commercial transactions, there should not be any freebies. Maybe the 80-seater or 40-seater should start from an Agartala but pay its dues in Guwahati or say in Kolkata airport, because those airports also have to run. But at the same time, we should find a subsidy, a direct subsidy mechanism, which Naresh Chandra committee set up by the government, the previous NDA, and they had made a suggestion about direct subsidies, that let the transactions happen as they are based on commercial principles, and where needed, the strong arm of the government comes in and subsidizes those small operators and the small players. And that money also doesn't need to come from taxpayers. Just a 1 or 2% cess on the travelers will get that. And we're anyway paying. So if I'm sure Kramer will agree that for the losses that he incurs on these remote routes, 40 people or 20 people sitting in a Boeing 737 going from, say, Jammu to Srinagar, that's a sheer loss of jet fuel. Yes. But who's paying for that? It's people like us on this dais and in this room flying Delhi, Bombay or Delhi, Hyderabad. We are paying for it. So if that cess is taken out, frankly, it's not coming as an additional burden on the passengers.
So that's why we want the smaller aircraft to fight that sector.
Right. And then get paid through the subsidy rather than being paid by the airport guy or the larger airlines buying credits. Pradeep, if you want to answer that, this is a great opportunity for you. You're the one who gets appreciated and then also hammered.
Thanks, Amba. Yeah, actually, we agree with the point that the airports charges. The point is that we have to have uniform charge across the board, and the other factor is that we are not actually making money in spite of all whatever the charges are, and we are actually still losing money. If you see, accumulated losses are still there in DIAL. Now, having said that, the government request for having smaller aircraft with a lower charge, perhaps connecting to smaller stations, is something which is perhaps, if the ERA does direct and it comes through, we may look at it. And the fact is that we had opposed lower charges for smaller aircrafts earlier. Primarily what we saw was they were connecting to airports which didn't require connectivity through small aircrafts. These were actually airports which are actually having the infrastructure and the load to feed in large aircrafts. And they were actually utilizing this rule more for lower revenue. But that impacted us. So therefore, originally when this policy was there, we were one of the people who actually opposed it. Having said that, if it is specifically targeted at airports which are actually small and which do not have connectivity and do not have the load, it's something which we can also welcome. That's what
Thank you so much, Pradeep. And can we have a quick score update? I think the gentleman behind you is checking scores every 10 seconds. Any more wickets gone?
Please ask him to speak.
Okay. So now,
sorry, the score?
What's the score?
248.
Good morning, sir.
248 for 4.
This is Ramesh Yao.
Just a sec, there are larger issues that work here. 248 for 4 in how many overs?
40. Okay. Oh, good.
Okay.
5, another 1.
5.
Oh, big round of applause. I can see Kramer getting more and more
Sorry,
concerned
sir.
now. Okay, one question at the back, and then we'll come to the most exciting part, which is MRO.
Good afternoon. This is Ramesh Yaul from Maharashtra Airport Development Company. I have certain issues because we are operating a small airport. The small airport where the traffic is not more than 2 million, 3 million, the expenditure on maintenance, expenditure on security is very heavy as compared to the income or revenue received from the
So can I just
airport.
request you to come straight to the question, because you're running
Yes.
a very
So
tight-
I was to say that as far as security is concerned, it is through CISF. It is called a sovereign function of central government, Ministry of Home Affairs. If it is a sovereign function, can there be any system, some system, where the charges are directly collected and spent and security be arranged directly by them rather than the charges to be recorded by the airport operator and then payment to them and going into the loss?
So who should answer that, Mr. Ashok Kumar or Mr. Machendran?
I think Ashok Kumar sir.
One is the policy maker, the other is
Yeah,
the regulator.
policy maker, and for smaller airports up to 1.5 million, I think the proposals come to MOCA only.
Okay, so that falls under the ministries, Ashok sir.
Personally, I support his view that security is a sovereign function, and it is a state's responsibility to protect to safeguard the security. But as I said, it is a matter of perception, which is again a problem, because the bigger policymakers thought that the people who are flying in aircrafts are rich enough to pay for the security. That was what it started many years back. And I have returned or taken up this many times personally, that this should be made as a sovereign function. And we are also trying to work out some way where we can reduce the cost of the security, because there can be a system where if the number of flights are not sufficient to support the security staff, we should either have a toned down security system. It doesn't mean compromising security, but the number of people. So I can just give a statistics offhand because I wrote the letter yesterday. Nearly there are 1,284 CISF personnel in about 18 airports where there are less than 2 flights in a week. And that cost is about 77 crores.
Wow. At 18, you said 77 crores in 18 airports.
Airports,
Which
where
are 2
there are
flights.
only 1 or 2 flights a day throughout a week. Not even a week, 2-3 flights a day. So this is, but then problem is, it's very difficult to talk against security, because it requires guts to take a stand and say that, okay, this is this far, security is this far. So this is a problem which we have to address not only in this sector. The security requires, somebody has to really take a stand and overrule the concentration of security persons. This is one point I would like to address, and we have taken it up with Ministry of Home Affairs to take it up as from the Consolidated Fund of India, because they are not paying anyway, CIS is being paid from there. And we have only 59 airports where CIS is present, and the remaining airports, it is not CIS guarding, and nothing has happened from there, touch wood. So we'll take it up. It's a good suggestion, we'll take it up.
Fantastic. Okay, so we got 10 more minutes to go, and I'll hand over to Vivek Gaur. He's also paying for a lunch, so please listen to him carefully. I think enough has been said about aircraft maintenance from the Make in India perspective. It's the lowest hanging fruit. It's our aircraft. It's like we buy a car, but the car goes to, say, Nepal or Bhutan or Sri Lanka for repairs. It's as ridiculous as that. You got the numbers about 800 million odd crores, which will only become a billion odd, which is 6,000 crores. That at rough calculations, that's almost like 50,000 jobs, which we've lost. Is our aircrafts, our Indian rupees, which get converted into dollars, and that create jobs and add to the GDP of our neighboring countries. So it's a great SAARC summit movement where we actually create business for our SAARC friends, but I think that's getting a little too kind. Over to Vivek. We forced him actually to, I think he'll give you the exact numbers, but 50, I presume 60% of his revenue is actually coming from outside, which is fantastic. And he's just opened a branch in Nepal. So great for the GDP of Nepal, but we forced him. Vivek, all yours.
Thank you, Ambar, distinguished panelists. MRO is the secret weapon of aviation which every country in Asia has discovered other than India. We spend in India about 4,500 crores outside the country purchasing MRO services. This money is spent in Sri Lanka, Singapore, United Arab Emirates, Hong Kong, Jordan, Turkey, in that order.
Malaysia.
And Malaysia, sorry, I forgot Malaysia. That's roughly 12 crore rupees per day. So per day, 12 crore rupees worth of MRO services in foreign exchange are purchased from outside the country. We are in the MRO business in 9 countries across the globe. We have 20 hangars in operation, 3 of which are in India and 17 of which are abroad. There is a reason for this, and the reason are twofold. Number one, in India, if you do MRO services at any airport, other than the 14% service tax, there is the airport royalty. In none of the other 12 airports we operate do we pay an airport royalty. I do not want to, or service tax. I do not want to deny the government their service tax or the airport their income. But the point I am trying to make is that the world operates on very different economic principles, from charging a high employment generator industry so much of taxation that it is not worth repairing the aircraft in India. The second point is, and these are facts from my own balance sheet, is the cost of hangars in India. The cost of hangars in India is about 4 to 6 times, dollar for dollar, square meter for square meter, more expensive than in advanced nations like France and UK. We have 12 hangars between France and UK. The most expensive of those 12 is 3 times cheaper than the cheapest hangar we have in India. Now, if you make the cost of the factory so expensive, there is no question for a businessman like me to invest in my own country, and there is no reason why an Indian carrier like Indigo or Spice or whoever to come here for repairs. That's fundamentally the issue. Many reasons behind this: economic reasons, taxation reasons, interpretation of policies, but those are the facts.
So Vivek, can I request you to come to 2 or 3 suggestions which like the ministry can think through from Monday onwards?
One, I think, should be the reduction of royalties, and we'll have to find another way for the owners of the airports, be they public sector or private sector, to get their revenues, because they have to run their business. The second would be, there is a Serve from India scheme, which the ministry is fully seized of the matter and taking action, where MROs also get benefit from the export income they generate. I won't go into the details, but it's available for the manufacturing exporters. The MRO sector in India, if even half the MRO work that is going abroad were to be done in India, it would generate, in my opinion, between 8 to 12,000 jobs, high-skilled jobs for this country. I think there's great potential in future for MRO, which is why astute businessmen like me have invested in it. But the train has been a long time in coming to the station. And I am glad to see that seminars like this are happening, and enlightened bureaucrats in the ministry are looking into these issues, and I am sure in due course of time they will get sorted out.
Fantastic. So on that positive note, we can take maybe one more question. Anybody? And before you ask the question, if you can also just update the scores, it will be very kind of you. Okay, so in that case, I think this is one of those before time departures. On behalf of the organizers, Economic Times, I would like to thank the distinguished panel which is here. It was extremely enlightening, interesting, straight talk, which is very, very refreshing from the Minister and Mr. Ashok Kumar from the Ministry, Mr. Machendranathan from ERA. I also thank our friends Vivek and Kramer from the industry for sharing their perspective of the airlines and the MRO. And on behalf of, and you've been a great audience. Thank you so much, and let's have a great day forward. Thank you so much. I'll hand over to the...
Thank you so very much, Mr. Dubey. I think that was an excellent panel discussion there, and you kept it very interactive. So let's put our hands together for our panel chair as well. And may I once again request Rishi to please join us on stage, thank our panelists and our panel discussion. Thank you, gentlemen, for making this such an interesting beginning to the day. We'd like to thank you personally. Let's put our hands together once again as we create some great memories. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sri Kumar. Mr. Ball, a pleasure indeed. Let's put our hands together. And of course, once again, we appreciate the presence of our panel chair, Mr. Dubey. Thank you. Rishi, may I also request you to join us as we capture a group photo so that we can create this great memory. So may I request all of you to please smile those brilliant smiles. Thank you so very much.